All right, welcome back to Powerful, Not Perfect. I'm your host, Dale Betancourt, and today we are talking on the topic of curiosity and how it unlocks personal growth, deeper connection, and creativity in our everyday life. Our guest today is author of The Magic of Curiosity, Drew Worsham. Drew, welcome to the show.
Del, thanks so much for having me. I feel so honored.
Yeah. I stumbled across your book on Instagram. Apparently the algorithm said I might be curious about it, and I did end up clicking. And I loved the book, man. It was great. I am on a personal journey myself of growth, and so it was right up my alley. My wife teases me all the time about the fact that I only read self-help books, and but this one was amazing, and so I'm excited to be talking about it with you today.
Oh,
Um,
thanks. I mean, I'm very, very biased, so I appreciate that.
originally when I started this podcast, I wanted to have people on that were doing things in traditional ministry, like pastors and worship leaders, as well as non-traditional ministry, like athletes and musicians and artists. And you really fit both of those, being an illusionist and a life coach and a pastor and a church planter, a father. Any other titles you want to highlight?
Yeah, I think I mean, that probably it. I mean, a husband,
A
that's a
husband.
big one. But yeah, I think yeah, kind of, and now author, which is crazy.
Author. Yeah. So this is your first book.
This is it. First book. I never thought I would write a book. I think I had so many friends in ministry who had written, and the way they talked about it, it felt like that friend who runs like an ultra marathon or does a triathlon or I don't climbs Mount Everest. It always just sounded so daunting and heavy. So I was like, yeah, that's probably never going to be something that I do. But um, yeah, with a lot of encouragement from family and friends, just started kind of writing, not knowing where it would go, and then it was like I looked up and there was a book, and so yeah, I kind of feel like I stumbled into it.
How long did that process take?
Um, just the writing process, I felt like I got to do pretty quick because a lot of, the book is, it's a lot of my own journey, as a magician, mentalist, like, my whole job for 20 years has been that of like sparking curiosity in each of the audiences that I stand in front of. And then a couple years ago, realizing that as a teacher, and specifically with God's word, that was such a driver. Like always wanted to use language that sparked curiosity and that actually maybe posed more questions than answers. Like I wanted people to leave, whether it was an event that I was speaking at or it was our church, I wanted them to leave wanting to discover more and not like I said, just giving them the answers. So when I looked back over just that thread of my life and realized that curiosity was a major piece, I think just sitting down and being disciplined, I think I ended up, my goal was to write like a chapter a week. And so I would, which isn't too crazy. And so it took me probably about 5 months of just being disciplined. Now the editing process and going through it and, combining chapters and deleting chapters, that is a whole nother process. But just sitting and just kind of almost like a journal, sharing what I wish, like as a younger, like my younger self would have known. Yeah, it's about 5 months.
Could you share just a little bit about you're a lead pastor at a church in Texas?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, so backstory is went to school to study, I studied psychology. What I was going to do is actually thought I would do like counseling, like marriage, family counseling. And I had learned a trick or two summer right before I graduated high school. And I ended up doing a card trick for some friends, and a teacher over like saw it and was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'll pay you to do my son's like fifth, I think it was 5-year-old birthday party." And I remember almost like my response was like, I have no idea how to do that, but I'll figure it out. And at his birthday party, there was a lady who owned a restaurant, kind of like a bar and grill, Tex-Mex restaurant. And she was like, "Hey, I would love for you to come and like table hop. We're always looking for like musicians or performers." And I was like, "I don't know. I'll figure that out." And I mean, just a couple of days into doing this, there's a lady who is eating there. She's like, "I own an insurance company. Could you do our corporate party?" And I was like, "I'll figure it out." And had just started following Jesus and stepped on stage. And I mean, seriously, it was so small. I was like, "Jesus loves you. God bless." Like, that's it. And there was a lady who worked there. Her husband was a youth pastor. And he's like, "Hey, I want to hear more of your story. Why don't you come share that with our youth group?" And then just the ball started rolling. Well, I went to school and ended up transferring to a private university, Christian university. And when I did that, everyone was like, this guy's a magician. He travels." And I mean, I had done just very few things, but I traveled throughout college so much so that when I graduated, I just decided to hit the road. So I toured for about a year and a half with a musician and getting really serious about my faith. I'm diving into the word. And one of the questions that I was like really wrestling with was this commandment that Jesus has given us to make disciples, to invest our lives in, those that are just a step behind us. But I was like, how do I do that? Like, I'm definitely getting to be an encouragement and an inspiration from the stage, but discipling, I'm not doing that. So I started kind of really falling in love with the local church, even though I was traveling and was really wrestling. Well, I was in Washington State and was performing at a university and met a guy who just shared his heart. And he's like, "Hey, Washington State's most unchurched, you know, state in the U.S. at the time, college students, most unchurched age group. We want to start a church that just goes after the heartbeat, that has no desire for the gospel." And he just kind of like almost on the side just said, "Would you guys be interested in helping?" And it was like something just like awoke in me. I was like, yes. So unpacked my bags, found an apartment, and like 9 months later, we ended up planting a church. And it was, I mean, successful. I'm not sure what that means, but there were people showing up and people were driving across the state line. So year two, we planted a second church. And in my 11 years in the Pacific Northwest, I think we planted like 15 churches.
Wow.
At least I would raise up. Part of my job was raising up these leaders, these pastors, training them, and then sending them out. And then in 2017, I moved to San Antonio to help a church start church planting. And so I moved there, was a kind of a college young adult pastor, was a teaching pastor there, and then created a residency and trained church planters. And then we planted a church in 2019, and I was the lead pastor of that church until about 2 years ago. I was still traveling, still performing, doing corporate stuff, speaking at events, conferences, and leading this local church. And my son, who's 4 now, I just turned 4, was born with a lot of health complications. And it was just so much for my family. And so my wife was like, "Hey, something's got to give," is a short version. And we just kind of, man, wrestled through that. And I did like a life mapping thing, got really curious about the way God wired me, designed me, and realized that I love teaching and I love life on life discipleship, but like organizational leadership, not my strength. And I can do it. I can probably maybe do it better than a lot of people, but it was like really draining me. And um, I had essentially my counselor was like, "Drew," he's like, "I give you a year before you like burn out or maybe something worse." And I was like, okay, that was really freeing. So 2 years ago, I stepped off staff. We are still heavily, heavily involved in the local church. I still call myself, I'm still a pastor. I just don't get paid by the nonprofit that I helped start. And so still, gosh, making disciples, investing in our community, loving people, walking alongside of them. So, and then get the opportunity to do that on the road as well.
And then are you doing magic now still?
Yeah, yeah. So still, it's still like it's a hybrid. It depends. Like, so I'm at
Okay.
like currently at an event, and I'm like the preacher, the pastor of this. It's at a camp, and so I'm here in Missouri as the pastor and speaker. And but gosh, I still love the magic and illusion, so I'll use some of that, some of his illustrations, In the corporate world, I'll do keynote speaking, but a lot of that is also, hey, I want you to come in and perform for Google. But then, like, can you talk about curiosity or wonder and how it connects to innovation or whatever it is? So, yeah, so still do a lot of the creative side. I love that. I think that'll always be a part. And then love getting to teach God's word. So I feel like those are the two. Yeah, and they're kind of like crossover. So those are the two lanes I run in.
Yeah. I love just hearing the journey and how it's evolved and um, where you're going. Do you consider curiosity a personality trait or a skill that can be developed?
Mm. Um, I think, well, I mean, in the book, I talk about how I think we're all born curious. I use the illustration, which is backed by science, that like, if you have kids or been around kids, I mean, gosh, they're so curious. Like the average 4-year-old, which my son's 4, asks 300 questions a day, is what science says. And it's about everything from we know like the color of the sky to why things work the way that they work. Like they can't stop being curious, and I think that's every kid. It's not just a few. And then something happens in the journey, and science says that by the time I mean, especially nowadays, that 4-year-old gets into say middle school, the questions usually drop from 400 to or 300 to like zero. And so I think in many ways, it's a default way of seeing the world. I think we want to understand, we want to experience wonder and awe, and the mystery of it just kind of captures us. And then I think and I say this in a negative way, not in a positive, I think we outgrow it, not in a good way. Um, and so it's like I would say it's like is a skill that we naturally have, or a muscle that we naturally have, and then over time, with a lack of use, there's kind of this atrophy, like so we like lose it, but we can all regain it, and that's the encouraging part.
Yeah. How can curiosity help us live more like Jesus and walk in his ways?
Ooh, gosh, I could talk about this forever. Um, yeah, so I love diving into, and it's not just like Jesus in the four gospels. Like, I mean, when you see, his fingerprints all over the New Testament, you see God show up. I mean, even just in my own time with the Lord, like yesterday, I'm like reading in Genesis 16 and where Jesus shows up in the wilderness to Hagar and he asks her questions. Like, there's this sense of curiosity, even though he knows, it's an invitation. And Jesus in the biographies of his life, like I think he asked, and I may need to fact check this. I think it's like 300 questions in the four gospels. Um, and I love that. And oftentimes when he's asked a question, he just asks a question. And it's this invitation, I think, to draw stuff out of people. So I think one, curiosity, it it makes us look like Jesus because that's what Jesus did. The second thing I would say is like curiosity. I've been thinking about this a lot since the book came out, and I don't know if like I'm gonna say this strongly, and I really do believe it, but like I'm still wrestling with it. I don't know if we're able to love without curiosity.
Mm.
Like if like your wife showed up and I was like, "Oh my gosh, do you love your husband?" And she's like, "Yes." I was like, "Are you curious about just who he is, what he cares about, what he's dreaming about, what he's working on?" She's like, "No, I don't care about those things." You're like, "Uh, like that's really hard." Like, and I think about even just like when those sparks and love is starting to get built, like that first date that you go on, curiosity runs rampant. Like it's all like you just have a million questions. You want to know favorite bands, favorite colors, like what they're dreaming about, like what kept them up late last night, favorite TV shows. Like you want to know all of it because it's a part of love. And I think Jesus is curious about us and wants to know what's going on in our hearts, what we're wrestling with. And yeah. So I think us being curious about other people is just a powerful way to love them. To go, hey, what you're walking through or what you're thinking about or dreaming about or that opinion about that thing, it's a part of who you are. And that matters to me because you matter to me. So I'm going to ask questions and not just assume that I understand. So yeah, I think it looks like Jesus. And then I think it helps us love people like Jesus. And, I don't feel like I can get these bullet points, but I think also curiosity when it comes to the things of God actually drive us into deeper intimacy with Him.
Mm,
And so, like, I don't know, as we really wrestle, like, I think about, God's people, and I mentioned this in the book that, Jacob wrestles with God and has his name changed to Israel, which means, the one who wrestles with God. And then God chooses to name his people, his chosen people, his family that he's making Israelites, like those who wrestle with me. Like, and I think that that's curiosity. Or God even using the words in Jeremiah, like you'll seek me. Seek is it's a curious word. You'll seek
mm,
me and you'll find me when you seek me with all of your heart. Or, you'll find me when you're curious with all of your heart. And so it leads to just such depth when we're willing to come to God and go, here's where I'm really at. And I want you to meet me in this space. And it may be mystery that you meet me with, but that's okay.
yeah, I love that. I think of the verse where it says, "Knock and the door will be opened." It's
Yes.
it's like we never really know exactly what's behind the door, right? But there's a lot of people who think that doors are just going to be open and they're going to walk through them. And I come to realize, like, no, you have to knock. Like, you have to knock and see what's there, right? It's probably more than you realize. Um,
Yes.
so,
And not every
uh,
door opens,
true.
which is also interesting. But to be curious enough to go, I'm going to knock, and God, in your timing, um, yeah, you open the doors you want to.
Yeah, that's good. Um, what hesitations do you have with technology and how it may be impacting our ability to remain curious?
Ooh, I'm not the anti-technology guy. Actually, I have to constantly monitor my own use of it because I'm naturally drawn to just, I mean, I guess like most people. And so whether that's the iPhone or just any screens or gosh, all the conversations around AI right now, like, yeah, I'm not the guy who thinks technology is bad or it's wicked. I think it's neutral. I just I think we have an enemy who loves to distort stuff. It's like, I mean, take something like sex. Beautiful. It's a gift from God, but the enemy loves to distort it and then use it as a distraction.
Mm,
And so technology has so many gifts. You're in California, I'm in Missouri. We're able to have this call. That is wild. It's crazy. Most people, I mean, have their Bibles on their phones. Like that is unthinkable, 500 years ago. And so it's a beautiful gift. I think the problem is that I love John Eldridge in his new book, Experiencing Jesus Really, which is a phenomenal read. Um, he says that we're all disciples of something. And he said for most of us, we're disciples of our phones, of technology. It's where we spend the majority of our time, our energy. And he says it's forming us whether we realize it or not. I think one of the ways it forms us is it diminishes curiosity. Everything is a quick Google search away from being explained. We don't wonder anymore. There's not this like, okay, curiosity that spins. Like we get a little curious, like a shallow curiosity, and then we Google search it, and then we're done. We walk away from it. We don't sit and ponder and think and dream. So I think that's one thing. We're also used to everything being instantly given to us. And curiosity sometimes is slow. It's sitting with something for a little bit longer and pondering it, but we want instant gratification, and technology gives us that. So um, I don't know. Yeah, even just the fact that we have every morsel of information is at our fingertips, and within a millisecond, all of that is to you. And Eldridge says this in his book. He said if we're not careful, technology's promise is that there doesn't have to be any mystery in your life.
Mm.
And when there's no mystery, there's no wonder, and there's no curiosity, there's no awe. And he says this, which I think is just like really been wrecking my heart, mind. He said it's the phone or our technology makes the same promises that a tree in the garden did, that you can know everything.
Mm.
You don't have to be curious anymore.
Yeah.
You don't have to wonder. Um, so yeah, I think that's my hesitation of just going, hey, how do we have to we stay disciplined in this? And it's a lot like maybe we kind of mentioned briefly like alcohol. Gosh, it in and of itself, it's not bad. Are there dangers? Yes. And so we have to be careful.
Yeah. Um, so you say that fear and growth can coexist. Can you tell me about a time you grew while having a lot of fear?
Yeah, great question. Uh, Once again, I mentioned this in the book that, you know, fear and the word wonder in the Bible are often interchangeable. That's why scripture would say that the fear of the Lord. It's not that we're afraid and we run from him, but there's this sense of awe and wonder, curiosity about God. That's the beginning of wisdom. And yeah, I think that fear reminds us of how small we are. Like the thought that came to mind that was like with my son and his health issues, and there being this like being real fear that we might lose him, and we still wrestle with that. Like that's not we're not out of that. Like that fear reminds me of how small I am.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's very sobering. It's like we love control. We love to think that we're in control. And I think fear, wonder, curiosity, all that, like it kind of unplugs us from the matrix
Mm.
and it allows us to see hey, we're really small. We're really out of control. But there is a God who is in control. And so I can't depend on my own strength because I can't save my son.
Yeah.
And in many ways the doctors can't. But I can lean into God who I believe loves my son more than I do.
Mhm.
And I love the heck out of that kid. Like, but God loves him more, and God has his days numbered. And I can't add or subtract from that. Like, yeah, so I can choose to try that fear allows me to actually grow in my dependency and my intimacy with the God yeah, that fear is driving me to. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When I was reading that in the book and you were saying, you said that, I think you said, if my son died, I told God we're through.
Hmm.
And I was
Hmm.
like, wow, that caught me off guard. Like when you said that, I mean, I don't, I'm just getting to know you now, but a little bit, but I was surprised by that. Do you feel like that was something for you that was like an emotion in the moment, or do you think that was an actual, like that was a promise to God in that moment, but something's changed now? Or how has this situation with your son drawn you closer to God?
Yeah. So in the book, I tell that story about how, you know, leaving, I think it was a neurologist, and the neurologist, just with all of these questions, we had no answers. And he was just like, man, we just don't know if your son's going to make it. And like leaving my wife and my son in the hospital and going to alleviate the babysitter of my daughter. sitting in the parking garage and just like falling apart and calling out to God and telling him like, and I mean, yes, I think there's a lot of emotion, but I also, I don't know, it's looking back, I think in many ways I did mean it. Like, I think like it's hard to tell, but that was what I was really feeling, regardless of like what I would carry it out. But to go, God, like, there had been nothing in my life that I'd prayed harder for than his health. Like our whole church was praying, people were praying across the globe for him. And so to look at God and go, God, like if you take him, I'm walking away, like we're done. Um, like through tears and like a raised voice and like that thought of going, God, either you can or and you won't. So either you won't or you can't. And like I'm done. But in that moment, it was where like God really met me. Like, I mean, not like in that season, like in that very moment, I felt like the Spirit of God just like embraced me. Like almost like he was bear hugging me and giving me space to just pound his chest and be like, God, I'm scared. Like I'm hurting. I'm so upset. And it was that moment that I think led to just so much intimacy with Jesus. Like I had never experienced him that close and that real. And so what it began to teach me is that I can trust him. And I think that's been the journey for me of going like it, I don't know if I don't feel like it was a threat. It was just that was the cry of my heart. And I think in that process, what God has shown me is that I think he actually wants us to come to him honestly.
Mhm.
It's like God's like, Drew, I know you were feeling that. Like Dale, I know that process, like that crossed your mind.
Yeah.
Like, like for every one of us, there's that doubt, those questions. We're like angry at him, and God's like, why are we pretending? Like I, I think sometimes our prayer life is more of an illusion than what I do on stage. Like
Yeah.
we come to God and we're like, look, God, like I have all this faith, and He's like, who are you kidding? Like and I think one of the reasons that, uh, and I mentioned this is like that King David was considered a man after God's own heart is because David was raw. He was so honest. He was just like, God, did you just abandon me? You don't care anymore. You just left. Like, and then the next breath, he's like, oh, there you are. Like it's David was willing to come to God as a full human with both his doubts and his faith, his fear, his insecurities. He brings it all to the table, and God's like, yeah, that one's after my heart.
Yeah.
And so I think God meeting me in that space, it as we're still in this journey, what he's taught me is that I can be honest. I can share those things with him. He doesn't get like my questions don't dethrone God.
Hmm.
Like I think we're scared. We're like, well, if I ask this big question, then God, I don't know. Like we're not the first person to ask those questions, and He's not shaken by those. But I'm learning to trust Him, and so I really do believe it's been such a journey that today and tomorrow may be different. We'll see, but today I can say, hey, God, if you heal my son, you're good, and if you choose to write a different story, you're still good.
Hmm.
You're still good. So, um, but I would have said that 4 years or 3 years ago, but now I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, well, I will be praying for your son and for your family too. 'Cause it sounds like you guys are, yeah, still in the thick of things.
Yeah,
Um,
still there.
yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that personal story. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet.
Um, I think, as since we're talking a little bit about kids, and you were saying that, kids are just naturally curious, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, how do we as parents continue to steward that, even though they're probably better at it than we are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, this is the first thought, and you can help guide it. If this is not kind of like what you were thinking or had in mind, I think about stirring like or stewarding the curiosity that's in my kids, like in their hearts, as well as my own. Um, and one of the things that we've been practicing as a family is, and this is good whether the kids are, you know, they're infants or they're teenagers or they're grown up, like, or even if the kids are not yours, like they're just people you're investing in and disciples that you're making, is to join in the curiosity with them. And I know this sounds so silly, and listen, there's no shame, but like I think so often we want to quick to give them answers, which totally makes sense, right? Like, oh my gosh, my kid wants to know why the sky's blue. I'm like, oh, because the ozone layer's reflection off the, whatever it is in the molly. Like, we just go into these answers to a 3-year-old that it's not exactly what they were like looking for. And unintentionally in giving them, we're like, oh, we help them. We're like making them smarter, which we are. Like that's the tension. We can actually squish their curiosity.
Mm.
And for us, what we've been practicing meeting our kids' questions with more questions. So entering in the curiosity with them, like, "Oh, that is a great question. Like, why is the sky blue? Why do you think it's blue? You know? And it's usually crazy. It's not going to be right because they don't know anything about the reflection of the ocean and the ozone, like all that. And so it ends up just being this like fun game, like that we get to. And it doesn't mean we don't ever answer questions. It's not like we avoid answers. Um, but entering it into or even just kind of like let them process. And then usually what happens is like, well, Daddy, what do you think? And then I'm like, what I think is that maybe because the way the sky is, or like it may be the ocean because it's blue, it reflects, or like whatever, because God made it that way. Like that is, I think, so like it makes curiosity a part of your family dynamic. And the same is true, let's say, like as a pastor, when somebody's like, well, like even a heavy question, okay? And I'll use this as an example, but this could be anything, literally anything. But someone's like, why do you think God would allow suffering, in in the world? And what we do is we try to give an answer to explain it, but it's like that kid that's like, the blue sky, that doesn't really help me because they're not really the answer isn't going to unlock intimacy for them. What they want to do is they want to be seen, and they don't feel seen in a suffering world. And so entering it into a not with a not yet believer or a new believer, why is suffering happening? You're like, hey, that is a great question. It's a really big question. Why do you think?
Yeah.
Like I mean, just tell me, like if you to guess, like, or if you think if God is good, why would he allow that? Or if you were God, why would you like, could there be, I don't know. Like, so sitting in their curiosity, what I've seen is like oftentimes that person will go, well, now that I think about it, I guess like they just like it's like that's more of an answer for them than what you would have given them. And
Yeah.
so just being curious with them. And I'll say this, that when you allow yourself to enter that with your kids, it stirs curiosity in your own heart. Because you
Yeah.
start to go, yeah, why is the sky blue? I think I remember getting a science answer, but is that right? Like, let's think about it. Blah, blah, blah. And and you get to dream with your kids.
Yeah. That's great. I remember hearing a time where I think Brene Brown might have said this on a podcast or something where she said, I always knew my kids were about to do something really uh, interesting or curious. I don't know if she would use the word curious, but right after they said, I'm bored, she said,
Ooh,
like they would say, I'm bored. And if you just sit and don't give them anything to do, you just go, oh, okay. And you just wait. Pretty shortly after that, you will see like all this creative stuff just come out of them. And I really love that. You know, my kids this morning, they were building robots with boxes and things like that, and I'm just like, I didn't tell them to do that, but they were just, you know, off on their own, doing their own thing. So we
I
can learn a
love
lot.
that.
We can learn a lot from them, I think.
Oh my gosh. Well, that curiosity, which sometimes is connected with boredom, because the technology will sometimes, like, we don't have to be curious, we can be distracted. But that curiosity leads to so much creativity with boxes and sticks become swords and magic wands and forts and everything. And so a lot of it, yeah, it comes from just giving life space.
Yeah. Um, I I want to tell you a story. I took some of your advice from the book, and one of the things you said was talking about those mundane moments and having curiosity. And I was actually at DMV yesterday. And
Gosh.
I think you used
Yes.
the example of DMV, and I was waiting in line. I was probably an hour before I even got a number. And uh but I was standing outside and I just was like, okay, I'm going to take Drew's advice, and I'm going to be curious right now. And I noticed some things that I wouldn't have noticed had I would just been waiting in line. Like I probably would have just listened to a podcast or something like that. But instead of doing that, I like stood there and I'm like, wow, this building is actually like made of cinder block and it's like rounded. And then when I got in, I'm like, wow, this is actually a really pretty building. There's like tiles everywhere. They got those, the brand big ass fans or whatever. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the whole place, I was like, wow, this building is beautiful, like so crazy. And then I was just hearing all these languages. So I mean, Sacramento is so diverse, and so with just hearing so many different languages, I'm like, I wonder what language that is. Like, I wonder what they're speaking. Like I should probably know that, but at the same time, it was just all these things were hitting for me. I mean, just I was enjoying the fact that I'm like, wow, I'm so glad it's not 100 degrees out here this morning. Like there's this like cool breeze on my face, and it actually kind of took me back to a time I was waiting in line at like a water park for some, I don't know, for whatever reason. But like I got this like glimpse of a moment when I was a kid, and it was just like, oh man, this reminded me of a time where I was like waiting in line to go down this exhilarating slide.
Yeah.
Um, so it was just weird how all those things clicked for me, but I just wanted to say that that was really powerful. And like you said, it just brings so much joy just in being able to be more mindful, be more curious.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And hey, listen, if you can do it at the DMV, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
I, hey, that is so encouraging. And it's to me, that's like the sweetness of it, that these like mundane, boring moments that we usually just endure, like you're allowing your heart and your imagination, to just be present and to celebrate different ethnicities and to maybe even pray for them or to notice architecture and the beauty of a building and wondering what it was before or what it's going to be in 100. Like you just, um, it does something really magical, and allows you to be so present. And or to maybe to borrow the words, like I think it allows us to take a step towards what Jesus promises is the life and life to the fullest.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, definitely. How does curiosity improve our health?
Mm. I could probably ask you this question because you've been on such a journey. And so I'll start and I'd love for you to share a little bit. But um it so I think I mean in all areas, I'll use an example. So take like physical health. Um I mean, just being curious about like, so for a holiday, I got one with Christmas. I think my wife or I can't remember who gave this to me, but it's like one of those Aura rings. I've had it for a couple of years, and it's just being curious about okay, like how it tracks sleep patterns. Okay, so how if I have caffeine, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon versus 3 o'clock or later, like how does that affect my sleep? Or and then how does that affect my mood or my energy levels or what I put into my body? Getting curious about that. Like if I have fast food at 10 o'clock at night, how that changes, just the way I like think or how focused I am the following day. Water that just all of those like personally, am I working out? Oh my gosh, I felt like I have more energy. I wonder if there's a correlation to that. Probably is. Um, but being curious, I think is a huge step in actually getting like physically healthier. Without it, we're just kind of like, I mean, you're just guessing. And you're like, I hope I'm healthy. And we don't know. Um, Even one of the things that like, and this is, I am not curious about, I mean, I am curious, but I'm not curious about the doctors because I just like I pass out when I even think about, literally think about blood. And I've tried to be so curious about it, but and so much to the point that I found out that I have this thing called the vagus nerve syndrome, that when my body hears about blood, like you'd be telling a story, or I see it, and not just like a little cut, like but specific, like give blood or type things, my nervous system reacts like I mean, instinctually, and so like it slows my blood pressure down, my heart rate slows down. Oh, just so all the blood leaves my face and my head, and so I get lightheaded and pass out. Anyway, that was a tangent. My point is going to the doctor, like in a routine checkup, so doing blood work. I struggle with it, but that's a part of being curious. Curious, like I want to know how's my cholesterol, how's my heart, all those things. So those are important. Um, so that's just one example of physical, emotional. There's a lot of science that's coming out that is connecting curiosity to mental health. So the higher your curiosity is, the more mentally healthy you are. And so I would say even just emotionally, one of the things that's like for curiosity, it's so powerful is asking yourself the question like, okay, I'm feeling something. What is that feeling?
Mhm.
Why am I feeling that? So okay, like uh Dale, you send me a text, and all of a sudden I'm swarmed with these feelings. Like, let's say you cancel dinner plans, and I'm like, I'm upset. I'm like angry a little bit at you, and then like sitting with it, and you're like, no, what I am is the feeling I'm actually feeling is lonely,
Mm.
and I'm a little scared. Wait, why am I scared? Well, because I feel like maybe, wait, oh, we're going. I feel like Dale doesn't like care for me as a friend anymore. I'm not valuable. Like that he would just cancel. Like, is that, and then being curious, is that true?
Mhm.
Where does that come from? Oh, like feeling emotionally abandoned as a kid, or like, like you dig and you're like, okay, wait, hold on. Now let me get curious. What's actually true? Dale's kids were sick, and he's actually being a good husband and staying home and loving his wife by caring for the kids. That's
Mhm.
why, like, that curiosity. Now emotionally, like I'm in a healthy place. So my counselor says like emotions they're like the dashboard lights in your car. Like they're neutral. They just point to something else. And so if it's like the check engine light comes on, if you don't get curious about it, that your car may break down later on. So that emotion that you're feeling, go, okay, wait, I'm going to be curious. Where is that coming from? What's that stemming from? What's happening here? So that's emotionally. And then spiritually, oh my gosh, we've been talking about that, but how it like, man, that curiosity drives us to deeper intimacy with Jesus and to know him more intimately. So realizing it's a great mystery, but our curiosity drives us to go deeper. So
Okay.
is that helpful? How's it been for
Yeah.
you? Let me flip it
That's
on
super
you.
helpful.
Like,
No, I mean, so I oversee 34 staff members in a hospital setting. So it's busy. I'm a dietitian by trade, but I'm a manager or director basically. And one thing that I see, I like that you brought up the emotional or the kind of the mental aspect of it, right?
mhm.
Because what I have seen is that people who are naturally more curious have better relationships.
Oh gosh, yes.
People who aren't willing to have those hard conversations to say, hey, this is what I felt, but I might also be having some assumptions about what your intentions were. It If they're not willing to have those types of conversations, they're actually going to experience a lot more stress inside of them. And people who are willing to have those hard conversations, which is unfortunately not that many people, not willing to step into having those hard conversations and say, I was hurt by this. You know, um, And it, so those are the ones that are going to feel that stress inside of them pretty strongly, you know.
Yes.
And so I've grown a lot in that. I mean, as a manager director, you have to have conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I think a big part of that is having curiosity too, right? And not making those types of assumptions.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, 100%.
so
How's it been for you, like in the just even, I mean, you've been on this like personal health journey. Like, how have you seen curiosity in your own journey?
yeah, you know, initially I had such a hard time waking up in the morning, getting up early, and I honestly I wasn't in the word that much, you know. Although I've always been, I mean, I grew up Catholic, and I really stepped into my faith when I was in college, basically,
Mm.
and but I always had a hard time like really getting in the word regularly, and
Yeah.
I guess I started to ask myself, what's preventing me from getting up, you know, and getting up early and being with God and getting in the Word. And as I started to explore that, um, I started to realize that I didn't really have many excuses. I was actually awake in
Huh.
bed, and I started to ask myself, well, what would happen if I just started getting up and making that a practice? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm gonna, what if I just commit to this? And I mean, for the last probably 4 months or so, I've just been consistently waking up probably an hour earlier than I usually do. And it's drawn me closer to God. You know, I've been in the Word, I've been doing a daily leadership devotional um, that is both faith based and leadership based. So it kind of is a daily reading. And um, I think for me, the biggest thing is that I feel more energized. I feel like I have much more focus. I I feel just more excited to be alive, you know.
Okay.
What because you talk a lot about persistence and consistency. What is something that you failed at eventually to persevere because you didn't give up?
There are two things that just popped in my head. And I honestly could probably pick anything in my life, but the big ones that I feel like I find happening often is one in the magic, like in the creative side. Like I'm constantly like thinking, okay, like how can I like learn new things, new techniques? How do I make it to where the storytelling connects to the heart, to where you're inviting people into something bigger that has this like bigger impact than just, oh, that was neat. And when you create something, you're like, okay, maybe I like write it out. I'm like, this is really, really cool. This is going to be awesome. And then you test it out. And sometimes you can test that out with a small group or so, of people on the streets or in a coffee shop or with friends. And then sometimes you just have to do it on stage. And usually it's not that it, like fails, like it bombs, like it just doesn't work kind of thing. But I'll step off stage. Like even last night, like I was performing a piece, for a large crowd, and it's kind of newer, and it just didn't land the way I wanted to. Still cool, crowd still applauded, audience doesn't know any better, but in my mind, it's a fail. And so I go back and I'm like, okay, what was it? Was it the pacing? Was it the timing? Was it a method? Was it like what was it that I could tighten up? And I'll try something different next time. And then I'll be like, okay, we got a little bit further, but I think I can make this better. And then what happens is never once do I write a piece, give it to the audience, and it's where I want. And the same with sermons. But the 50th time, it starts to it starts to create a life of its own. A sermon, the same thing. Like I'll tell this illustration because I thought it was going to be like, this is going to be amazing. And it's like, okay, it just didn't get it there. So then I go back and I go, oh, it was a setup, or I didn't tell it well, or, the connection point wasn't there, or, hey, I actually did those verses out of order. Like if I actually like hit this point and then kind of go back, you get this kind of like whatever is that storytelling. So that's a fail to me, but you fall forward and then you tweak it and you make it a little bit better. Um, so maybe I don't know if that's practical for people, because I know those are two very, magic. No, not many people do that. Not many people are maybe are preaching. So, but one that's really, really practical is my marriage.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, literally, this morning I'm sitting with a guy here, who's the director of this camp. He's about to get married in like 3 weeks. And we're having coffee and he's just asking questions about marriage because I'm scared to death that I'm going to disappoint my wife. Um, it's like it's starting to kind of like we're getting closer. And just allowing this young man and just like remind him, go, hey, you're going to fail a lot daily. It's part of it. Like we all kind of think, oh, when I get married, I'll be perfect. I'll be amazing. My wife's gonna be so lucky that she married me. And like, no, like we get things wrong. We say things that we shouldn't say. We show up late when we told them that we'd be on time. We hurt feelings. It's part of it. And then it's like, I'm not giving up though. Like, could you imagine like if all of a sudden like you get in one fight and you're like, well, I guess this marriage doesn't work. I quit. Like you'd be like, no, of course you wouldn't do that. You'd be like, okay, we've we fumbled a little bit. We tripped. Now let's figure it out. And then maybe the next argument is not quite as heated, or you bounce back quicker, or you apologize faster, or whatever it is. Like that's a part of the curiosity and learning and growing. And man, here's the deal. 11, and a half years into marriage, I'm way better at it than I was year one. Why? Because I stayed curious and keep growing, and my wife keeps growing, and yeah. So yeah, I think those are two things that popped into my head.
That's great. I want to end on one of my favorite quotes from your book. So you said the endless journey of discovering God. Here's the thing about curiosity and faith. It's not about having all the answers. It's about stepping into an endless adventure of discovering who God is and who you're becoming in Him. It's less like completing a puzzle and more like exploring an ocean. No matter how far you sail, there's always more to discover and new depths of His love, wisdom, and truth that leave you in awe.
Mm.
Where can people buy your book, Drew, and where can they find you?
Yes, luckily my last name is somewhat unique, Worsham, like worship, but with an AM. And so, gosh, on social media, or if you just do drewworsham.com, you can email me at drew@drewworsham.com. The book you can find on the website. Also, it's easy to get on Amazon. And so, which, yeah, you may get it faster because if you order it on the website, I'll sign a copy and send it to you. But it may take a few days if I'm traveling. So, yeah, it's all on Amazon or Kindle, or I even had a great time reading the Audible version of it. So, yeah, please, please, if you're listening, would love, love to stay connected and help in any way that I can in the journey.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining today.
Bet.
Have a good one.